everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'm very excited to be putting on another Astro Fireside Chat. I have invited somebody that I am a big fan of, Mr. Donny Lim from Alchemy Light. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, actually. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. I'm still not comfortable having fans, but although my face is all over the internet. So,
I got a reading with Donny for my birthday last year, which was pretty bang on thus far, now that I'm halfway through the year. And then I ordered a report for my husband, and I think his eyes were glued to the back of his head after that reading, because some of the stuff is really materialized. So he's an awesome reader. And what are we going to talk about today, Donny?
I'm going to talk about my passion topic, I suppose, and I'm certified on it. It's about the Venus cycles. More specifically, it'll be known as the Venus star point. And on a broader spectrum is the Venus star, like what's behind me, the 5-pointed star. And that's the pattern that the Sun and Venus actually forms from a geocentric point of view. And let me just jumpstart with a slide sharing, because I'm that Virgo-like. Do you see the slides? I hope you can see the slides. Yes. Okay, so today we are talking about, Venus, what's your fire, true desire? And we're talking about the divine feminine cycles. And I would actually be correlating like Venus as a divine timing tool or predictive technique as our path to love and also empowerment. And when we think about Venus, I think this slide basically kind of summarizes it all. All things, sugar and spice, all things nice. Plus the donuts, of course. I just got to put it in there. But then there's more to Venus. Depending what angle are you looking at, what kind of astrology you're looking at. So when we talk about the gift of Venus, I think this is a very good starting point when we talk about Venus, because it's a circle with a cross below. And the circle basically talks about spirit, eternity, infinity, renewal, wholeness, creative energy, perfection. Is all like, the higher self and the soul's energy. And the cross is at the bottom, which talks about matter, practical application, and also pragmatism, day-to-day living, basically. So in essence, Venus's gift is talking about how are you living your cosmic self on Earth? And I think that's the best way to summarize it. And how do you bring the beauty of your spirit to be in sync with one's true nature and character, to be the source of love that he or she can provide out into the world, basically sharing your gifts and talents. And when we talk about Venus's gift as well, Venus is also known as the queen of the heart. But having said that, Venus has its own nasty traits as well, as we know, because on one hand, Venus can be great and all those lovely, dovely things, but Venus can also be possessive, jealous, vindictive, and also capture. I think the best thing that I can, the best example I can quote is the Venus flytrap. But on the other hand, Venus can also be very charming and very enticing with her knack of diplomacy and cooperation. And Venus is also about sweet talking into making others believe in all sorts of things as well. So if we actually go back to the Kabbalah tree, the ancient Hebrew mystics kind of sums up beauty in a very nice way. Because beauty, as is mentioned here, it does not only lend itself to the physical, but also realms like moral and spiritual ones as well. And the planet Venus basically plays a very central essence into civilizations, advancements, mankind's evolution, and the greatest creations and inspirations for that matter. And if we think about Venus on the astronomy side of things, it's got something very special as well, because it's the only planet in which on its axial rotation, it actually rotates away from the sun. The rest of the planets actually axial rotates towards the sun. So if we actually talk about the axial rotation of a planet towards the sun, is about involution. Whereas for Venus, it's the opposite, it's like to evolve away from the sun. So there's this kind of magical energy with Venus as well from this perspective. And one very unique trait about Venus is also that it doesn't have a magnetic north or south pole. So this actually makes her the unifier of the cosmic or solar system in this case. And in a larger form, she actually radiates oneness and also unity for that matter. And we will later on go to understand the Venus cycles, that she is like the one of the main players in terms of divine timing. And how much do we believe in that? Because I think most of us in the modern era, we are just kind of like, you know, that go-getter, you know, especially in you living in the Western world, Candace, you know what I mean? Like everyone's like kind of like, you know, the next come up, you know, like where am I gonna achieve that my next goal and this and that? And sometimes we just forget of how cosmic divine timing comes in and sets us off on that journey, rather than we keep pushing before time is actually due. That's the best way I can put it. And so in terms of Venus, she has a lot of like representation depending depending which facet you're looking at. So I've actually put here like from the Sumerian school of thought, she actually is represented by this picture. And also, of course, we know about Aphrodite, and also like she takes on many, many names. I shall leave it as that. Okay. And so now let's move to the what do you call it? The geometry of what Venus can create. Because if we talk about Venus's synodic cycle, she actually moves with this golden ratio of phi that actually denotes divine proportion, which is around 1.6. And if we think about how Venus actually is tied into the Fibonacci series, in which I'll show later, and also how she is, how everything is just divinely proportioned. The numbers like 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 1 is 3, 3 + 2 is 5, 5 + 3 is 8, 8 + 5 is 13. So all these numbers belong to the Fibonacci series, and those numbers are actually well presented in terms of the Venus cycles. And this 1.6 comes in very strongly later, because Venus actually goes retrograde around 1.6 years, every 1.6 years. And for example, if we just go back to this recent Venus retrograde earlier this year, the previous one actually took place around 1.6 years earlier.
That was the one in Gemini.
Yes, Gemini. Then now we have it in Capricorn, and the next one will be in Leo coming up next year. in which I'm looking forward to actually. And on this slide, I've basically put down all the mathematical calculation. And so you can see everything that's 1.6, which is the golden ratio or phi ratio, and everything that's like things like 8 years. And then the pentagram has got 5 points that's formed because of this relationship. So what I want to communicate is that there's actually this thing called, what I call at least, the cosmic heartbeat or cosmic clock that Venus is playing in the background. And this actually acts like a natural divine rhythm or magic of creation, of growth and conscious evolution that is governed by Venus in this case. And this is the Fibonacci series that I'm talking about. That is what that forms the evolutionary spiral, what I call it. And we've got 5 fingers, we've got 5 toes, we've got 5 limbs. So it's a very human-related planet, Venus, that is.
It's so interesting, the connection to the pentagram, because that's
yes,
just
it is.
that connection to like the 5 senses, the 5 elements.
Yeah.
Thought about it like that.
Yeah. And although in astrology, we do have 4 elements like earth, air, fire, water, but all these 4 actually combines into the 5th element, which is called ether. And so now let's move on to the more technical, laying down the foundations kind of concepts. And this is what I call the Venus star and the Venus star point. So here are some of the definitions. So what is actually a Venus star? So a Venus star is an energetic point in the sky that is created by the conjunction of Sun and Venus. And when we think about a Venus star point in particular, a Venus star is basically a 5-pointed pentagram, which consists of 5 Venus star points. That's what it is. And when we think about, let me start with this Venus star point, because this is something building on to something bigger. And the Venus star point is basically created with a Sun-Venus cazimi. So this can happen when a Sun-Venus are both in direct motion, or this can also happen when Sun and Venus retrograde conjunct each other to create this Venus star point. And we can think about this Venus star point as some sort of like a portal to build bridges. It's also a point of igniting passion for love to evolve. And if you think about it as an energetic point of creative life force, it actually helps us to find our identity through relationships. And it's also talking about relating to other people that gives us a better sense of who we are. A Venus star point is also how good you are in going with the flow of things. Venus star point, which is the energy of Sun and Venus, is also talking about that wanting to belong to somewhere. It's your calling. And so in other words, it's also about your purpose in life via finding the people you can relate to as well. And with this, you'll find your confidence and self-esteem, which is what Sun and Venus are about, to move forward in your evolutionary journey. And 5 Venus star points will actually form a Venus star. And I've talked a bit earlier about a Venus star point formed with Sun and Venus both in direct motion. That is what I call an evening star point. And this only happens when Venus is in direct motion or she is furthest away from Earth or is an apogee, in other words. And on the other hand, while Venus is in retrograde motion, she will form a morning star point, which is denoted here as MS. And this only happens when Venus is closest to Earth or in perigee. So allow me to share with you the formation of the Venus pentagram. So this is something on my channel, not this one. So we'll start off with the heliocentric view of things. So the sun is in the center, and then we've got Earth in green and Venus, which is in blue over here. So you can see how these three bodies basically rotate via the simulation in forming the 5-pointed star in the sky.
Wow, so cool.
Okay. So notice that the sun is in the center. So this is a heliocentric view. And so this is from another angle, which is still in the heliocentric view, the 5-pointed star. So we've seen this before, so I'll just zip forward. So this is the geocentric view, which is putting Earth in the center. So we've got Sun and Venus doing their little dance around Earth. You can see it actually forms like a 5-petal flower pattern in the sky. So Sun is here, Earth is here, and Venus is here.
So how long does it take for it to complete a full star pattern cycle before you start a new cycle?
Okay, this is my next slide actually. So back to the slides. So we've got what we saw in the simulation just now. So these are the 5 Venus star points forming a pentagram. I call that the pentagram mandala. And so if you count from Venus star points to Venus star points, each point actually lasts around 9.6 months, 9.5 to 9.6 months. So if you actually tabulate 5, because it's 5-pointed, right? 5 times 9.5 to 6 months is actually 4 years. So this actually represents, at least on the outer cycle, a 4-year cycle. But there are longer cycles because the thing is that for Venus to retrograde back in the same sign, it takes about 8 years. So for example, we've just gotten that Venus retrograde cycle in Capricorn, which happened earlier this year. So the previous time that Venus actually retrograde predominantly in that sign in Capricorn was actually 8 years before. So 2014 was when it happened. And then you just move in multiples of 8. So what actually happens is that every 4 years, you're going to have this Sun, Venus kissing each other, lovingly, I hope. So in 2022, Venus retrograde and the Sun actually kiss in the sign of Capricorn, for example. So 4 years later, you will have that Sun, Venus kissing each other, but this time Venus is in direct motion. And then another 4 years later, Sun and Venus retrograde will kiss each other in Capricorn again, forming that energetic point, which is called the Venus star point. So you've got, on one hand, 8 years, which is the same phase, morning phase to morning phase or evening phase to evening phase star point. That's 8 years. And if you talk about the same sign, morning phase to evening phase is 4 years. And then from star point to star point by transit is 9.5 months.
So what might the difference between the star point phase retrograde versus direct? Because I remember when that was happening, I think it was like around the 6th through the 8th of January, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So what be like in terms of how like the effects that it would have? Would it be more internal? That Venus retrograde was super gnarly for me. So,
Ooh, okay, when we talk about a morning phase star point forming, which actually happened earlier this year because Venus was retrograde when she kissed the sun, you can see it like a new moon kind of energy. Something is seeding itself. Whereas like 4 years later, when Venus is direct in Capricorn kissing the sun, there's some sort of like a full moon, full bloom kind of energy coming forth.
gotcha.
So in essence, you can kind of think about the Venus star as like the marker of a new moon and a full moon cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it also depends whether that star point actually hits something in your chart, in which you'll go into later, pertaining to that. And I've actually written here that Sun-Venus Cazimi occurs in the same sign every 8 years. This actually creates like the like one Venus phasal return cycle. That's the longer 8-year cycle. So like 2014 is when Venus retrograde conjunct the sun in Capricorn, and then 8 years later, we've got that earlier this year again, 8 years later. So the next one will be 8 years from 2022, which is 2030. It will happen in Capricorn again. And every time that this star point is formed, it actually moves 2 degrees clockwise or against the grain of the zodiac as well.
Okay.
Because if you actually look at, for those who are interested, to look at the whole zodiacal degrees or range in which Venus actually went retrograde in 8 years ago in 2014, and now you will see that she actually stationed to go direct 2 degrees ahead zodiacally. So this actually moves along as well, like in that 2 degree difference.
Mm-hmm.
So in this slide, I want to emphasize here that we have a star point which is in Gemini. And for 1.5 cycles, when Venus actually kissed the sun in Gemini, it's actually hovering around 16 to 19 degrees of Gemini. So people who've got personal planets or angles which are around 16 to 19 degrees of the mutable signs, recall from 2004 to 2016 whether is there something going on that's like part of a larger picture that took 12 years to fully bloom or unfold by itself. And when we talk about the 8-year retrograde to retrograde cycle or direct to direct cycle, that in between 4-year break, there's this kind of like re-highlighting or reiterating of the same theme that's unfolding for you. It's almost like this this new moon to full moon energy. That's the first 4 years, and then the next 4 years actually is like that waning phase.
Very interesting. I don't have any placements there, but my husband's Mars is around 18 of Gemini, and we connected within that period and then went apart for 8 years and then came back together literally during
it's like an unfolding story, right?
Yeah.
In the larger scheme of things.
Yeah.
And so, okay, this is something more technical we're entering into. So I've actually put the 5 signs in which the Venus star points keep forming. And I've actually plotted for 2020 to 2028. And right now we're actually having this 5 star points that's active. In the sky, I've highlighted in blue. So we've got one which is happening in Gemini, one in Aries that star point was formed on 26th of March 2021, and 9.5 months to 6 months later, we've got this, what we have now, because Venus retrograde and the Sun actually kiss each other on 9th of January or 8th of January, depending where you are in the world, to create that Capricorn star point. And we're going to have a treat because we haven't had a Libra star point since 1879.
Oh, wow.
So each star point in the sky by zodiacal sign will just kind of like come in and die out. And if you minus 2022 with 1879, we have not seen that for a good 150 years.
How is that? I would assume, being that it's almost like the impression that I'm getting is that the new star point is going to act like a north node of Venus, right?
It's definitely going to soak in a lot of like Libran energy.
Yeah, so that'll affect like style and like more femininity, I would assume, right?
I'm going to talk more about this because the thing is that where do we have transit Pluto? Late degrees of Capricorn, right?
Yeah.
So it actually squares this star point at 29 Libra.
Do you anticipate that could produce a lot of divorce with that 29 degrees?
Actually, they brought about Roe v. Wade overturning. That's what I've gotten. So you can see how this actually wraps into that, old crusty lawmakers Capricorn, power-hungry Pluto, squaring this Libra star point. Where's the diplomacy? Where's the law? Where's the equality? Everything that Libra stands for, all those things. It all comes into play. And then this will be coming out later this year. And we are going to have that Leo star point, which is a causation of Venus retrograde in Leo, fully in Leo actually, conjunct the Sun. And this will happen on 13th of August of next year. So it's 9.5 months, roughly, times 5 points. So what I'm drawing here is actually a 4-year cycle, but then I can just go on and plot with time.
Yeah.
So you actually can see that the last star point in Gemini was 2020. So 2024, we've got an evening star. That's the middle point, I would say, in the larger cycle. And then Venus retrograde in Gemini and the Sun will kiss each other in 2028 again. And this time is 2 degrees ahead. 2 degrees behind, sorry. So it actually moves against the grain of the zodiacal order. Yeah.
Wow.
So you can see how the points are actually dynamically moving by transit. And with each star point, you can plot each sign with time. This one is a bit different because, for the Scorpio one, it actually switches into the last degree of Libra, but then it will gently dip back into Scorpio. We will have fully a Libra star point, I think in 2030.
Okay. So it's going to take a little time to really get that.
Yes. So this is just like a sneak peek or preview of that. But this isn't an easy one because when I actually investigate I call that the inception chart or the birth of this star point chart, the star point at 29 degrees, 26 minutes of Libra is not well expected. It's got that square to Pluto. Yeah. It's also got a lot of like other gnarly things as well.
Is there any correlation upcoming eclipse at the end of October? Because it's going to be at 2 degrees.
Yes.
Okay, because my eyes saw that 3 degrees.
Right after the star point is formed, we've got that 2 degrees Scorpio solar eclipse, I think. Yeah. Solar eclipse. So yeah, that adds on to the story of like, it's not going to be pretty. But in the larger scheme of things, if I were to put things in the larger picture, these 2 decades I find will be super transformative on many levels, on a social level as well, because we can see from here that the Scorpio Venus star point will be dying out and is paving way for a Libra star point, which is Venus ruled. Lovely. And then on the other hand, we've got an Aries Venus star point that is moving backwards in degrees. And eventually, this will give birth to a Pisces star point, which is the sign of Venus's exaltation. So in other words, we actually switch from 2 star points that's Mars ruled, eventually into 2 signs in which Venus functioned very well in. So I hope that as these 2 decades unfold, because this star point from Aries, it will fully die out to give way to a Pisces Venus star point only in 2041.
Yeah.
So this will fully happen within the next 10 years from Scorpio to Libra. And then this one from Aries to Pisces it'll be taking another 10 years. So this 2 decades is something very transformative. So I hope that after these 2 decades, while we both get older and wrinklier, that more of Venus's principles get rebirthed.
Yeah.
And there'll be more peace on Earth, and peace will be seen as a moral obligation for mankind or to humanity. I also hope that people will be looking past differences and attain more truths between groups of people. And since particular for that Pisces one, because Pisces got that oneness, it's got not so much borders. So I'm also thinking that the world will actually have less borders that separates us. And there'll be more consensus coming along as well. And you'll be able to uplift the whole earth with more divine feminine healing powers and energies coming forth as well.
A lot of art, I would imagine.
I hope better music.
Yeah.
Because Pisces is about music and Libra is about the arts. Yeah. So hopefully not so many auto-tuned songs and probably more classical music is born. Yeah, because the last time when the Pisces Venus star point was active, it was when Beethoven was alive. So hopefully it'll bring back that kind of that kind of energy to all of us. So this actually brings me to my next point. So I think what the audience will need to take note of will be the 5 active star points that's by transit in the sky that's active right now. But the head of the Venus star, which is what we are going through now, will be the head, which is right over here. So you can imagine this 5-pointed star as if you're lying with your limbs all spread out. So this will form the head. The two ends over here are the hands, and the 2 at the bottom are the feet of the Venus star. So like the grounding force, of things. And what do I have? Okay, this one. So far, I hope you can follow what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting because it makes sense. I mean, these are points that may be overlooked if you're just looking at traditional transits. I mean, unless you're really getting deep into looking at the retrogrades, you'd have to really be studying them.
Yeah, in quite a detailed manner. Yes. So this is what I was talking about. So these are the 5 star point and their signs that's currently transit in the sky that's active. So you've got the 2, which are the feet, talking to the head, and the black arrows is the is the direction of energetic feed. So from the receiving foot, this star point was formed in 2020. This is actually feeding into the Capricorn star point. That's the head. And then the head will actually feed the other foot, which is the giving foot in Leo. Although this star point actually happens in 2023, in the middle of August, but it's already active. Or we do see energies of that actually coming in. So I'll start talking about the mundane manifestations first. So for this portion, it's about playing around with the combination of signs to actually give certain mundane delineations. So the first one that I have after some reflection is that, there's going to be, Gemini is media, and Leo is famous people. Capricorn and Libra are two signs in which Saturn functions very well in. So what I wrote here is that you've got media frenzy from high-profile court cases. And this actually brings together the energy of Gemini, Capricorn, and Leo. And then you've got Libra here, which actually rules lawyers as well. So I'll get to that in a minute. And then Aries is the one to fight for my truth, to be seen, because Aries is the I am principle. So Aries and Libra as both hands of this Venus star, it also talks about we are in this current climate of a cultural war, because Libra talks about culture and Aries is to fight, is to have a war. So if I were to put all these things together, it's about media frenzy from high-profile court cases in times of cultural wars. So I'm actually observing what high-profile court cases are there. And then, of course, we've just got the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case that everyone's talking about, cite all women, you gotta believe in Amber Heard, but, but people are like, just kind of like, no, she's lying and, all those things. And you've got Aries and Libra, which is the typical, like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, kind of thing. And you've got people split right in the middle of this cultural conversation, like, like, are you supposed to look at facts, or do you just side with a sex in a high profile case just because? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's like cases of this going on. And and since we talked about Libra as being lawyers, we've got lawyers that emerged as rock stars. So who I'm talking about is like Ben Chu and also Camille Vasquez representing Johnny Depp in the case. I'm sure that, if for those who are surfing social media more, there's probably a lot of a lot of social media, Gemini, love, Leo for them, Libra, because they are actually defending Aries, a well-known actor, Capricorn, which is Capricorn and Leo linked together. So you can see how these 5 signs come synergistically together to actually form a story here.
Yeah.
And the case, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case is actually talking about DV, because I don't want you to get demonetized, Candice, and IPV. Do you need me to? DV is like domestic that, and IPV is like intimate partner.
Yeah.
So it's actually coming from that Aries evening star, because if you think about evening star, it's like a full moon, right? So it's got that projective energy coming from it. So this can actually talk about especially IPV in this case. And the case is all about that. So you can see how symbolically this actually ties into the whole story here. And because of this case, there's the hashtag #MenToo movement also gaining steam. This is to counterbalance the Me Too movement that was like, the height of the Me Too movement, I think it came when there's an Aries Venus star active.
Which is really interesting because
Yeah.
A couple of people who got caught up in some of that stuff, I believe, had some prominent Venus and Aries.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can think of a couple.
So because the last time when there's an Aries Venus star point, the closest one will be in 2018. That's the height of the Me Too movement. And that's also when Venus actually retrograded in Aries and partially into Pisces. But when the sun actually kissed Venus, it happened in Aries. Yeah. So it actually starts off like a new cycle, a new 8-year cycle in Aries. And we've got other high-profile cases that's ongoing. I can't really keep track of them all. We've got the January 6th live hearings that's ongoing right now. There's also a high-profile one. There's also one currently with Kevin Spacey that's in the UK courts going on as well. I've checked his chart. He's got the star points at this degree aspecting his natal chart and just lights up his whole chart as well. Ghislaine Maxwell, 20 years. R. Kelly, 30 years. I think I've got R. Kelly's chart delineated, in which I'll show the audience later. So going back to rock stars or role models being lawyers, I think this is quite self-explanatory. And I've also got the rectified chart of Camille Vasquez. Yeah, she's got Leo sun. No, she's got Cancer sun, but her Mercury is at 0 degrees of Leo.
You have an Aries moon?
No, she doesn't have. I think she's got moon in Libra.
Oh, moon Libra. Okay.
Moon and Pluto conjunct in late Libra, which is where the star point is going to be. So her moon and Pluto conjunction in late Libra is being lit up here by this star point that's really active. And not to mention that her Mercury at 0 degrees of Leo is actually square this star point as well. Although it's out of sign, it's still a square. Mm. So you can see how she actually goes for Amber in the court. Yeah. It's the way that she actually in cross-examination, like her moon and Pluto conjunction in late Libra comes through, and she's also got Mars and Saturn in Scorpio conjunct.
So I have a question for you. What about retrograde planets or planets that other than direct motion that are activating this? Like I look at that 13 degrees of Gemini, right? That's where we're going to see Mars retrograde through. Is there any connection to the fact that Mars is going to be touching on that Venus star point? Does that kind of signify like unions or like
there's going to be a lot of media related shenanigans because it's also squaring Neptune 3 times in the process. Mm-hmm. And not to mention that, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when I looked at the USA's chart, the Sibley chart,
Mars returns there.
Mars returned 3 times, and Mars will actually, transit Mars will actually station direct on the Uranus in the USA chart. Mm-hmm. So I think it's at 8 degrees of Gemini. So it's gonna be a weird time, for the US. Yeah. And the next one that I want to talk about is that I've also picked up the theme of religious radicalization or idealism extremism. So how do I actually see that? Where is transit Jupiter now? It's around that, first 10 degrees of Aries, right? This is this Aries it actually highlights this Aries star point.
Mhm.
And where is Uranus in Taurus transiting? Very close to squaring that Leo star point coming up,
Mhm.
which is already active. So in essence, we are actually talking about that Jupiter-Uranus cycle that's transiting in the sky.
Mhm.
Because both planets are highlighting different star points over here. And when we talk about Jupiter and Uranus cycles, this actually can talk about intolerance of other people's religion. And we are actually seeing that coming up quite a bit when we talk about India, actually, because they're recently slammed for being Islamophobia.
Mhm.
And if we talk about, again, that Uranus that's transiting in Taurus middle degrees is also trining the head of the star as well.
Wow.
You can see how it picks up that Jupiter-Uranus cycle in the sky.
Mhm.
And by the way, that Jupiter-Uranus cycle will actually form a new cycle in, I think, April of 2024 at 21 degrees of Taurus.
So it'll square that Leo star point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when a new star point is formed, all these star points will actually shift one backwards. But this Leo star point will be around for quite some time.
That's so interesting. So, I mean, the square, the Jupiter-Uranus, it's just going to really amplify
Yes.
retrograde big time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm actually tracking that cycle quite a bit.
That's going to be star-studded. There's going to be a lot of stuff, I would imagine, coming out of perhaps that Jupiter-Uranus is money, resources. It could be lawsuits, settlements, a lot more celebrity type stuff that might be
distribution,
coming.
Uranus of wealth, Jupiter. So it also can be digitization of money.
Yeah, that's inevitable.
All those things. Yeah. And the next one in which I picked up on the lighter side is that the head of the star is in Capricorn, right? So it's things that have taken place in the past, things that rule the past, because Capricorn rules time, right, of our lives. And then Gemini is what is in pop culture. And Leo is like what's in the movies and music as well. So what do we have right now? I always say that right now what we have with these 5 star points active is that there's a resurgence of old music or movie sequels in popularity, and it's even re-entering the charts, and it's even breaking records. Breaking records is ruled by Capricorn. So what do we have recently? We've got Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill. Released in 1985 because that song was actually featured on Netflix's Stranger Things season 4. And of course, on the movie front, we've got Top Gun Maverick. We can't deny that. And where do I see the Maverick part? We've talked about Jupiter-Uranus cycle, right? Previously, both actually rules airplanes or something in the air, something that's flying, right? So where is that Maverick, which is Chiron in essence? It's actually squaring that Capricorn star points right now. It's picking up that Chironic energy as well. So you can see Top Gun Maverick and Running Up That Hill, which is very much a Capricornian kind of title, right? That song.
Very Saturn.
So it's sometimes that literal. And I've also picked up another one, which is about Capricorn also talks about something, what goes up needs to come down. It's the natural karma of life. And Gemini and Leo talks about the entertainment industry, particularly Gemini, which means like pretty youngish actors in a way. And I've actually picked up that the stocks of a multinational mass media and entertainment conglomerate tanking. I'm particularly talking about Warner Brothers because they've got a few whammies on their hands.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a petition, very Gemini, to actually cancel Amber Heard and remove her from Aquaman 2.
Yeah, to have her replaced.
Or just completely remove it if they can't reshoot it. Yeah.
Wow.
And you've got also another one, Ezra Miller, which is supposed to be in the movie The Flash, that's also officially released from Warner Brothers, but then they've already spent $200 million shooting the movie The Flash.
Yeah, he's on a bit of a bender.
Yeah. And if you think about that Jupiter-Uranus cycle that's being picked up, right? Jupiter and Uranus, isn't it describing The Flash, the title of the movie?
Yeah.
So you can see how everything is like, coming in, and you've got the stocks tanking for Warner Brothers and Discovery.
Yeah.
Because of that. And you've got one male and one female. Mars and Libra. Go figure. You've got one each. That's like, in the equation of that. And the next one I want to talk about is touching on the regressive decisions pertaining to reproductive rights for women by crusty conservative lawmakers.
Brought to you by Pluto and Capricorn.
Squaring that Libra star point, that's really active. But then I've also mentioned that Chiron in Aries is also squaring the Capricorn star point. And Chiron in Aries is really about the abuse of power. And Capricorn is people up there, right, in the Supreme Court. So you can see how, and Leo is children.
Yeah.
And Gemini are the ones that's still curious about to enter that, adolescence, about to experience, the joining of bodies. So you can see how, and of course it caused an outrage. Aries, you can see people protesting, just very Aries.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how all this is like in play. Where's the equality, Libra? So this star point, I won't say that it's that peaceful.
I would imagine it's going to get emphasized more, just kind of thinking into the future. I mean, we're going to start seeing eclipses next spring.
Yeah.
That's going to be in opposition to that point. So certainly this is, and I've looked at the charts of the Roe v. Wade, not with the star points, but I've realized that it's really going to be about spring of 23 through about spring of 2025 that you're going to see this really ramp up.
Honestly, I think this will be one of the Black Swan events that's going to lead to the civil war-like energies for America next year. When this star point is active, that 29 Libra star point. I've actually argued with fellow practitioners and teachers who also practice this star point way of reading charts. Because if you actually read properly about the main characteristics, these are actually the inception charts, or the chart when these star points are formed. I actually freeze frame those charts and actually type out the main characteristics. This star point actually squares Pluto. It quincunxes Jupiter retrograde on the Aries point, very significant. It trines Mars in Gemini, getting ready to go retrograde. And also Vesta in Aquarius. So yeah, all this pile up on this star point in terms of its characteristics. I don't see it as, a very peaceful one to begin with, or harmonious one.
Sadly. And that'll be happening right before the eclipse at the end of October, like around the 22nd.
Yeah, it'll be like 3 days before, like 29 degrees Libra. So the solar eclipse will be at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Mm-hmm. Not to forget that the midterms are actually happening on a total lunar eclipse.
If they happen, let's say that.
Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
And so Leo is actually royals as well, one of the meanings of Leo. And Capricorn is also like the upper class, the echelon. And what I'm referring here is that there's potentially a looming royal divorce and a potentially spill all or tell all book deal that's going to come forth. I'm actually referring to the Harkles or Harry and Meghan.
All I can think about is doesn't he have a Cancer rising and he's got all that Pluto and all those transits in his 7th?
Actually, we'll go on to look at applications
Okay.
actually as the last part. So
That's
I'll
surprising.
let
Stated astrologically that they wouldn't stay together.
who do you want to look at? I've got a few people. How much time do we have?
Time you want, we can look at whoever you want, but I mean that would be really fascinating actually.
Let's look at the first person here, which is a rectified chart which I've done, which kind of held up very well actually. Let me just go to share this chart. Do you see Amber Heard's rectified chart over here? So I've gotten like a 12-degree Leo rising as her rectified ascendant. And this chart has basically held up very well. Most people thought that she's a Gemini rising because of her surname Heard, Gemini. But I would think that because she's so narcissistic, because she's been diagnosed with borderline personality and also histrionic personality disorders, that she's likely to be Leo rising. And 12-degree Leo is also the ascendant sign and degree of Johnny Depp.
Wow.
So they're literally like, I don't know if you can call it twin flame, but usually twin flames are very difficult relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You can grow a lot from it, but it does not end well.
Yeah.
And this is what it was. And I've actually plotted the 5 star points from the previous chart onto Amber Heard's rectified natal chart, and together with what it actually highlights in every star point to actually give context. So what really stood out to me is that you know how the 4th house, we talk about 4th house like someone's living environment, someone's roots, but 4th house can also be someone's surname as well. And her sun is in the 9th house of mass media, and the 4th house with that Pluto nearly conjunct. Pluto can also be the planet that rules Turd, T-U-R-D. And on mass social media, there's a hashtag going on called Amber Turd. Yeah. And that held up really well. And in Fairfax, Virginia, where that court case was fought, it's not over yet. It's not over at all, actually, with the appeal, everything. Venus was actually angular on the MC in Fairfax, Virginia. And it's on the fixed star Algol. And you can see her losing her head. Yeah. Like the Medusa head. I don't have to like elaborate, like my dog stepped on the bee, I think. Yeah. Was that the meme? And I wanted to change my locks or something, like, her very failed acting skills. Yeah. And if we talk about my dog stepped on a bee is actually Mercury, and a dog is actually ruled by Moon.
Wow. And she's had that position and the Jupiter opposition.
And it's in 3rd and 9th houses in court. She said exactly that. My dog stepped on the bee. And Moon and Mercury are both forming a T-square to Mars and Neptune. And if I were to look at the planets that's responsible for perjury, those planets will be Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and Neptune. So you can see it's very well represented by that T-square.
Wow.
Because Mars and Neptune are in the sign of Saturn. And we've got Mercury ruled by that Mars as well.
Wow.
And she's, I think Australia is going to open, I think Australia is going to go after Amber for not following through with the proper procedures for bringing her 2 little dogs and committing perjury in order to bring those 2 dogs to Australia, because Australia's got very strong biosecurity law.
Wow.
So from this Fairfax, Virginia case, it basically opened up cases for Amber to be prosecuted for perjury in Australia. And by the way, in Australia, Mars is actually angular.
Oh, wow. Well, and
Mars
she's
and
got
Neptune, actually.
eclipse coming in opposition to her sun. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be, there's more challenges in regards to court cases and fines coming.
So you've got the Libra star point coming up, conjunct her south node, and then a few days later, that solar eclipse is gonna be opposing her sun and conjuncting her Pluto. Yeah, I suppose she's gonna shake everyone off her repertoire or whatever friendship that she's got left and start anew. That's all I can say for her.
She got to sell everything and move to pay off Johnny Depp. I mean,
there's always Elon Musk.
how many?
Do you know the Elon Musk connection? Because all roads point back to Elon, actually.
Because, well, he's a Cancer sun, right? I'm trying to remember his.
I think, but a Taurus rising, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Taurus rising, and Uranus is transiting, in that sign right now. So that's why, yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and if you actually look at the 5-pointed star, the one that really stood out for me is that Aries star point at close to 6 degrees is actually highlighting her Mercury. That triggers her T-square.
Yeah.
Of perjury. So yeah, she's not very good at
Wow.
at acting. And the giving foot of the star point in Leo is in her first house. So maybe she wants to move with her kid to a new place and start something new. First house is to physical body, a new path in life, and all those things. And for people who want more practice, you can just plot the 5 star points onto the charts of Marilyn Manson and also Evan Rachel Woods, and see for yourself. They've got very strong activations from these 5 star points as well.
Wow.
So some homework for the audience if they are if they want to investigate this more. What do I have for? Let's look at Harry and Meghan, shall we? Let's look at Meghan first, because Meghan has got something very interesting using the star points method. And this is Meghan Markle's chart with the 5 star points plotted in. And same as Amber, the Aries Venus star point that's still active basically opposes her Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter. Stellium. And Saturn rules the 7th house of marriage and also the South Node in Aquarius, which is, the South Node is in a sign of divorce, which is Aquarius. And since Harry is the second husband, so Harry is actually the Pisces cusp.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ruled by Jupiter.
Yeah.
Not spared.
Wow.
And I think it's all over the news that, like Archie and Lilibet, was it? Yeah. Like all those shenanigans that's playing out that those 2 offsprings, they may not even be, in the flesh existing. So they're actually cooking up some lies.
Wait, the 2 kids?
Archie and Lilibet are allegedly the two kids.
Uh-huh.
And so there's this whole big thing about them, or people pointing out the inconsistencies, like where's Prince Archie, where's Princess Lilibet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, like they are playing this cat and mouse game pertaining to keeping up with appearances. Libra, they love to do, they love to keep up with appearances.
Wow.
And it's like, from what I know is that one particular other star point is highlighted here as well, which is anything that's connected to the fourth house. Because fourth house can be endings and beginnings. I do see it's more of like an ending of sorts, because Juno, which is the asteroid of marriage, is there. And it's highlighted here as well. Yeah. Because
Pluto and
because everything that rules Libra is Venus in the sign of Virgo, 13 degrees, and we've got 13 degrees of Gemini squaring exactly that Venus. So the problem has problems were already like surfacing around this time, like in 2020. I think that's also when they left the UK, but allegedly, speculation, hearsay, whatever, that they actually left the UK so that their facade won't be ripped, as in like the thing about Archie and Lilibet. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a whole bunch of lies coming forth pertaining to them. And now let's look at Prince Harry. He's also not an innocent party, but okay, so this is Prince Harry's chart with the 5 star points plotted in, and also the aspects of each star point. What is it aspecting, or what actually is lit up? For him, I actually see that he'll be returning to the UK quite a bit. And that's because of the 4th house cusp and also the moon squaring that Leo star point. That's the giving foot, which is over here. Exactly squaring.
Wow.
And it's also highlighting that vertex in his 7th house. And there's and the 7th house cusp, which actually rules Meghan Markle, is also represented by that moon, and it's squaring as well. So do I see them actually divorcing? I guess I don't have to say much.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty, I mean, in her chart, I knew one of them was the Cancer rising that had Pluto approaching, but when you look at the star points and you kind of put 2 and 2 together, it almost seems as if he may be spending more time at home, and that's like the beginning of the end.
And one very one additional caveat is that the upcoming Libra star point, it falls very tightly to his Pluto in a 9th house. So he's returning to the UK under the guise of he doesn't want to pay foreign taxes.
Yeah.
So he wants to spend like 6 months in the UK, 6 months in the US, but I think it's more of like an excuse to kind of have a clear mind to move forward with divorcing Meghan, in which we'll probably see more of that unfolding as the months go along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. What else do I have? Okay, okay. Let's talk about the one who gotten 30 years recently.
Mr. R. Kelly?
R. Kelly, because that one really like it shows a whole lot of stuff. So this is R. Kelly's chart. And so what's really amazing is that the current star point in Capricorn is conjunct his sun. And is squaring his Mars. Sun and Mars square. So is justice served for the abuse of women?
Yeah.
And the grooming, 6th and 9th house in square, it can also be like a grooming practice.
Wow.
And Sun actually rules the 5th house of, young people. Yeah.
But that
That's
other point that looks like it's almost in opposition to his moon. The one in Gemini.
Gemini is at 13 degrees. The moon is at
Oh.
23 degrees, but it's trining that Leo star point. Yes.
Yeah.
It's trining that Leo star point. So, yeah, that's what I picked up mostly. And the Aries star point basically conjunct his Pallas Athenas in the 12th. And Pallas Athenas is about democracy and justice. In the 12th house is to be incarcerated.
Yeah.
So you can see how these 5 points kind of each contributing their own little points, but it all adds up to him being convicted and going to,
And also the 6th house could be seen as like delays, because it seems like it's taken a really long time for this to really like play out and for him to finally, be told what the verdict was going to be as to whether or not he was actually going to go to jail. Do you get any ideas based off of some of these points in the transits as to whether or not he's going to be able to do less time or serve less time? Because these points are still going to be active.
But then all these star points will be moving backwards zodiacally. So if I actually looked a bit further into the star points, that means this right now this 18 degree 43 minutes Capricorn, 4 years later it will be at, I think it will be at, was it 16 degrees?
Okay.
So it'll be decreasing and it'll be eventually conjuncting that Mercury. So Mercury rules his 2nd and 5th house. If he actually is on his good behavior.
Wow. I mean, Cosby got out. Nobody really thought that was going to happen. So I'm curious to see what happens with this one, because I feel like also just some of the transits that are happening for a lot of these people are really like highlighting, where there's been abuse in relationships in general,
Yes.
whether relationships, sexual, what have you. So it's interesting that the star points are all kind of suggesting that it's bringing all of these things to the media and into the courts. So we start learning that these are not examples of healthy sexual or romantic partnerships.
None of that, actually. And I think that's coming from the hands of the star being in Aries and Libra. So Aries can be the abuse, and the Libra is to rebalance the scales of things.
Yeah.
So it's more of that as well. And the last one, in which I've just quickly prepared prior to our meeting, is someone who actually resigned as the leader of the Tories, but not as the Prime Minister of the UK. So Boris Johnson. And I plotted the same 5 star points, and he said that he'll stay on until October. That's when the Libra star point is active. And as we lean into a solar eclipse at 2 degrees of Scorpio.
Yeah, this is like new to me. I just saw like his health minister and a couple other people who I think were a part of his cabinet resigned.
Yeah.
And he has said that he would resign. So this is fresh, hot
I think
news.
it just happened today, just hot topics. Yeah. So it's surprising that the moon is highlighted by one of the 5 star points, and the moon actually highlights, his midheaven and also North Node as well. So you can see how all this plays in.
Yeah.
And
did he reason why? I mean, other than people probably calling for his resignation?
I think people are just calling him out for his BS. Because if you think about the sign of Capricorn, which is the star point we are currently in, it doesn't tolerate BS, does it?
No.
It doesn't tolerate BS. And for the very last one, let's look at the Ezra Miller.
I was looking at this chart the other day. I was like,
okay,
is something else.
So coincidentally, his midheaven is at 18 degrees of Capricorn, highlighted by the current star point. And you've got He's actually accused of grooming as well, kids.
Mhm.
And there is that Leo star point conjuncting his Chiron in the 5th house of children.
Ugh.
And there's actually news that's withheld regarding him for violence that's committed back in 2020 when the Gemini Venus star point was active.
Mhm.
But then everything that was being swept under the carpet has to come to light. So the
Yeah.
Gemini star point feeds the Capricorn star point, which is the midheaven. Everyone knows.
Wow.
And then Neptune is nearby, so the film is in the flesh. Yeah, I don't know what's Warner Brothers and Discovery.
And pictures, movies, Neptune, but there's also lots that's come out that was saying he was like, he had, weed and guns on like a farm, children.
Yes.
So anything dangerous or involving, substances is that Uranus, Neptune.
And that Neptune and drugs is also Neptune. And not to forget that the Capricorn star point feeds the Leo star point 5th house. There's kids involved.
Wow. And that's square to his natal Pluto. So that's really going to get activated quite significantly.
And 7th house is also a place where you get exposed as well.
Yeah.
You can see how all this kind of paints that picture nicely.
Yeah, Pluto coming into conjunction with his series also that talk about like abduction and kidnapping, or he's being accused of I guess of not abducting kids, but having kids and not giving them back.
And so the current star point in Capricorn highlights his Mercury as well, pretty tightly, about a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something regarding children, and 6th house is about, as I mentioned, grooming, but also like there's this kind of I'm the master, you're the slave kind of, unequal power dynamics playing up.
Yeah. Wow.
And that Aries star point opposes his sun as well. Yeah. So that highlights his journey, his relationship with children, that he's hurting more than protecting and nurturing, put it that way.
He's got some of the same squares that we saw, those cardinal squares that involve Neptune and Mars, as Amber heard. If you see like the opposition to Mars and the square to the sun.
Right. So you can see what the 5 star points actually light up. What it actually picks up, it actually actually paints the picture pretty well, I would say.
Yeah.
And if you've got time, I've got one last thing to actually show you, because this is good stuff, and good stuff are meant to be shared. And this one is actually the timeline of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So in this Excel spreadsheet, I've actually noted down the event that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually put down the transit Venus star point then, what was actually active, and the activations within both individuals' charts while that star point was active.
Mm-hmm.
Really caught my attention is that there's a lot of Gemini star point playing out. If you notice, everything's color-coded just for easier reference. And if you think about it, isn't this Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case the first trial after the OJ case that's being played out on social media?
Pretty much.
And Gemini actually talks about social media, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like is this kind of them having this cultural influence via their trial, their business being televised for a total of 6 weeks that actually impacted, all of our lives in some way, shape, or form. But I think what I want to mention here is that because that Mars by transit is also in the sign of Gemini, squaring Neptune 3 times, it's also about the mainstream media losing the public's trust as well. With that transit, Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces. And I feel that this case, because what's more interesting is what happened post-case, because they're still trying to paint this lady as the victim.
Yeah.
And I think it even like fueled the flame even more. And I think this will actually turn people more to alternative, more honest media sources on social media and YouTube. That means giving that independent content creators more slice of the pie, you know?
Yeah.
And it's also to me like a good sign that people have finally have finally had enough of whatever shenanigans that they're trying to spin.
Manipulation and spinning certain narratives. I mean, it's interesting even after, you know, she definitely did a bit of a media run, and she still did some things and tried to, I think, like plead her case still, you know. So it's, boy.
What's really amazing is that when that Leo star point, the one highlighted in red, at 22 degrees, Leo 39 minutes, is almost close to exactly oppose Johnny Depp's Saturn in Aquarius in the 7th house. It's almost like I've had enough, I need to leave. Yeah. But do I think that they were twin flames to start with? I'm not so sure, because if she's really gotten that borderline and histrionic personality disorders in her, initially she can be very charming.
Yeah.
She almost can, you know, exactly emulate. It's almost like being another him in a way, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I have in terms of what I have to share with the audience. I hope they learned something.
So interesting. I'm so glad we got a chance to like go through that, because it gives you a little bit more insight that retrogrades, there's more to retrogrades than just what we see purely, especially in this case with just the retrograde pattern. You know, it goes direct and then we move forward, but not a lot of people realize that there's sequences and patterns and stuff that are made in the skies, and that also they will be repeating in the future.
So it's like an unfolding story. It keeps evolving. Yeah.
Well, and if anything, it's making people realize that there is this bigger purpose or higher meaning behind this slew of all of this celebrity drama and things that are going on in relationships and like court cases. It's trying to make people realize that maybe not all is what it seems. And that we need to get to like a healthier way of having relationships and honoring like Venus.
Well, having said that, I mean, it's like, do I actually think that she will let it go? I don't think so. With her Venus in
Taurus,
Venus conjunct Algol. And Johnny Depp has also got Venus and Mercury conjunct Algol as well. On top of that, so at least the hate is mutual. But do I think that she will let it go? I don't think so. You know, with that Medusa energy, which is Algol. And so I would advise, if Johnny Depp's a client, to really watch out for who he dates next.
Yeah, because they're both still very much under that eclipse. So the eclipse is kind of active, and we're going to see, you know, Mars make oppositions, conjunctions to that eclipse point, and oppositions to that eclipse point. And I think that's going to be more that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah, and the whole court case is not done yet, and now it's, you know, it's was it appealing? Both sides, I think they are both appealing also. Yeah, because Johnny Depp didn't win on a landslide. I think he's got 2 million counterclaim to actually appeal. Yeah. So I think that's about it. I hope you guys love Venus as much as I do.
I really appreciate you giving your demonstration. Do you want to let people know? We'll put the links in the description below also, so you can find Donny. But where can people find you?
They can find me on YouTube And I'm all over social media. I think with me being a Gemini helps. I can juggle a whole lot of like social media accounts. And I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok to appeal to the late millennials and Gen Z as well. But it'll be all in my link tree. Yeah, I call that my electronic business card.
Well, we'll put all of that below so people can find you. And thank you so much for talking to us about the Venus star points. I'm really excited to go and like do some astro digging on this now and hopefully study with you in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Let us know, did you find this interesting? Have you had any of your star points? Or has there been any activations in your natal chart? And I know that you can also go and you can find your Venus star points as well. Do you have any information as to where people can find that so they know where their star points are?
There is actually. I'm actually a certified coach, mentor, teacher, and practitioner under Ariel Goodman.
Okay.
That's where I actually learned the Venus star and master it, hopefully. She does have a link in which I'll pass it to Candice later, and you can just download that PDF via that link to actually look at what star points are coming and going. Yeah, as we go along.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Donny. I'm sure we will chat soon. And thank you guys. You enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Bye.